I welcome all the learner and then participants here in the week 5 second session. So I've already started in this week regarding the explanation and understanding of the community development as very important approach and very important methods of social work, as well as it's also been used by the governmental agencies. So the term development, how this has been a governmental approach and how it has been a social work approach, we have little discussed in the last session. Also, we are going to discuss in detail in this coming sessions. All right. So the term development is widely used today, right? For most people it cannot act for them. It's like the economic change brought about by industrialization and globalization and liberalization. So the term also implies the process of social change, not only the economic change, right? So resulting in urbanization, the adoption of modern lifestyles and new attitude. So that could be clubbed with the and gel with the new kind of the demands. So further, it has a welfare connotations, which suggests that develop and enhance people's income and improve their overall educational level, housing condition, and overall health conditions and health status. However, of these different meanings, one is economic, another is social, right? And third one means talking about the welfare aspect, which is welfare for all. So the concept of development is most frequently associated with economic change, but in totality, right? So in general, if you talk about the development, the general ideology, general connotation comes in anyone's mind is about the economic development. So for most people, development means economic progress. That's okay, that's totally acceptable, because from the countries like India, where the community development, the major chunk and major subset of this is about the economic development. So this is the idea, is that if the community is economically well off, where the infrastructure is good and all, people are having the good buying capacity, so the development, we can call that the community is developed. So historically, that we have already discussed. So now let's discuss about the historical aspect and how this whole idea of community development has been emerged. So community development has probably been practiced for as long as there has been communities, right? Initially, when the human communities were settled, they actually support each other. There were also there was a lot of the philanthropies from the haves community. There was also the support system is been given by the civil societies like the churches and then mosque and then gurudwara and so on and so forth. So since the time immemorial, when there was a community, there was the idea of community development. It is hard to imagine the American colonies being successfully established in the 17th century without some degree of community development as a more formal term, not as like philanthropies and then being supported by any kind of the civil agencies, right? Or civic supports. So it is obvious that the nature and content of community development programs will vary in developing countries on the one hand, and then industrial post-industrial societies on the other hand. So keeping in mind the kind of the development in the developed nations and in the developing nation, the different kind of the approaches, in the approaches it actually varies as per the context of and dynamics of the community, right? So many scholars actually trace the origin of this whole idea of community development as a discipline. Now we are talking about the more formal approach and how it has been accepted as in one discipline after the post World War II reconstruction efforts, because we all know that after the Second World War, the majority of the countries were involved and they had actually faced a lot of devastation, lots of the problems and issues at the community level, at the micro limits, at the macro level. So to improve that, reconstruction efforts was required, and this was through involvement of some agencies, the governmental agencies or welfare efforts. So this is what considered to the actually introducing the this idea of social development or community development in a more formal manner. Others also cite that America war on poverty when they actually worked on to reduce the poverty of the 1960s, with its emphasis on solving neighborhood, housing and social problems as a significant influences on the contemporary community development. What we have already witnessed while we have all discussed the, all of you must be aware about how the history of social work emerged out of, demands which has been there by the haves node after the migration and immigration from the rural to urban areas, and the new slum culture, a new kind of the society has been emerged. So the need was then to come with the more kind of the welfare facilities. So this is what, and then neighborhood development approaches was we have already witnessed. So this is what the another belief that this neighborhood housing and social problem as a significant influences on the development and contemporary community development, what we see the community development in present day scenario. Okay, evolution of this discipline is continued. So in 1970s, there are two key journals on community development were launched. One was the Community Development in the UK, and then Community Development Journal of the Community Development Society in North America, very renowned journals. And then academic programs were also begin to incorporate the idea of the community, or typically within the degree like public administration, they talked about the community development and public policy that was so much around the community development, urban planning with concentration in community development. So these are the areas and then discipline which actually incorporated the idea of community development. So community development has evolved from its roots from social activism and housing to encompasses actually the broad spectrum of process and activities dealing with multiple dimensions of community, including physical, environment, social, and economy. So although it starts from the roots in the around the social activism to support the haves not, to support the disadvantaged community, to provided the housing, and then through the neighborhood development, or as we have already knew that how the Octavia Hill Hall charity organization society has emerged and supported the destitute, and then the people who were homeless and then jobless. So it's all actually emerged, and then later on it has been also included the further physical, environment, and social and economic aspects of the development into this idea of community development. So now once we talk about the community development, it actually entails lot holistic aspect of the community requirement and community needs. Now coming to the history of community development in India, how we have to actually see this all. So the very first phases, we could say, although historically or religiously our country was a welfare country in their own way, right? There are a lot civic societies were actually supporting their citizens, supporting their neighborhood and all. So this was all. So we are not going to discuss that, but in the formal way how it has been emerged. So pre 1947 early efforts mainly, if you look into the key development areas, so where they were around the revolutionary or voluntary organization like Arya Samaj, Brahmo Samaj, and then this Arya Samaj founded by the Swami Dayananda Saraswati emphasized Vedic principles, education, the abolition of caste discrimination, whereas Brahmo Samaj founded by Raja Ram Mohan Roy, so he promoted actually the monotheism, condemned social evils like sati pratha, child marriages. He also advocated for the widow remarriages and all. So these all movements actually plays very crucial role in shaping progressive social changes in India. So focus area was social reform, education, upliftment of marginalized communities particularly, right? And then major initiatives, these were the movements been run by some kind of the organization. So major initiatives in that period of the time also, we can talk about the Gandhian model of rural reconstruction, self-reliance through community work. So actually these are some very important area of intervention, like Gandhian model of rural reconstruction emphasizes on self-reliance, the empowerment of rural communities through local initiatives and then cooperative efforts. Mahatma Gandhi has given so much emphasis on the kind of empowerment and then local initiatives of the community member, like village industries. He was so much advocated for the village industries and small scale industries. He also emphasized on the basic education. He called it as a Nai Talim, where he also was an idea of incorporating the general education, basic education with the skill enhancement. So community cooperation was also so much emphasized on sanitation and then healthcare and all. So this is what the idea of Gandhian model, although Gandhiji didn't give any kind of the model, but his ideology later on been compiled into the kind of, we call it as a Gandhian model of social or rural reconstruction, or we can also many a time talk in the social work arena. So and then self-reliance through community work. So if you're believing in the Gandhian model, so definitely it is going to support the self-reliant and promote the reliant in the community work. Post-independence, if we look into the post-independence from 1947 to 1960s, so this nation building through rural development programs, community development program, CDP. So community development program actually introduced in the year 1952 actually is a landmark in the field of community development through some kind of the welfare activities, particularly by the government, right? So major emphasis was or focus areas were rural development, primarily because rural communities were major chunk of India's population, particularly if you look into that period of the time. So the urban communities, there was more than this rural communities were, and only very few amount of the urban areas were settled. After this whole industrialization, globalization, we have seen the change in the urban areas, the kind of the population, population issues has also been there in the urban areas. So, but that time, just imagine, rural development should be taken into priority. Even today, rural development has taken very important, aspect of the development or the community development. And then poverty alleviation. So, major concern here is the CDP, that is the Community Development Program. These were the major initiatives has been taken by the government during the 1947 to 1960s, you could say. So, service NES, that is the National Extension Service, that is launched in the year 1953. It was actually a kind of complementary to the Community Development Program. All right, and also the Panchayati Raj system that was launched in the year 1959 that promotes about the participation and decentralization of the power. So we have talked a lot about the restructuring of the power structure. So Panchayati Raj institution actually promotes this idea of restructuring of the power aspect of the community. So again, there are a lot of the drawbacks, so we're not going to that, but the policy is about to maximize the participation and this participation of the community through through identification of their own issues and then problems, and later on it has also been modified. So we will also discuss about that. So but here now it's very important to talk very specifically on the objective of the Community Development Program, CDP, that launched in the year 1952. As I've already mentioned, it is you could say the milestone in the development of the country, particularly the rural country, and it's a very important approach for the community development. So what are the important objectives of community development? So it's about improvement of rural economy, for say, to enhance the agricultural productivity and rural industries like ganna industry and sugar factories, and so related to the agricultural products, and thus the economic well-being of the rural people could be enhanced. So that was the improvement of rural economy. Later on, SAGs has also been involved into that is a microfinancing aspect. Then second is about the development of infrastructure. So we have already discussed that how it is important for a community to develop a good infrastructure. So CDP also one of very important objectives to develop rural infrastructure, including roads, schools, sanitation, drinking water, and health facilities available in the community, right? And that is what their basic human rights. Social and educational development. So that is about to raise awareness and improve literacy, health, and hygiene practices among rural people. Okay. So then also it's about the self-reliance. So once this all happened, it's actually build the capacity within the rural communities and enabling them to become a self-sufficient and sustainable in the long term. Democratic decentralization, as we have already discussed how it is important to develop the democratic decentralization, and one very beautiful example is what the government of India has actually launched is the Panchayati Raj institution. Through that, democratic decentralization became a truth. Achievement of the community development program so far. So increased agricultural productivity. So for sure, one of the major success of the community development program was the introduction of modern agricultural practices which help increase productivity, and actually that reduce the food shortages of the country as a whole. Okay. Then creation of the basic infrastructure. Creation of basic infrastructure, that is actually community development, resulted in the development of essential infrastructure such as roads, schools, health centers, and the community centers, which improved the overall equality of life in rural areas. So that is what the creation of basic infrastructure, where everyone could get all those infrastructure that is common to everyone. Then promotion of cooperative movements. So this program helped in formation of agricultural cooperatives with facilitate collective farming and marketing of agriculture produce and better access to credit and inputs like the Indian, like for example, if you take the example of IFCO, that is the Indian Farmer Fertilizer Cooperative Limited. So after development of this IFCO, where formed the to self-help scale and farmers access the fertilizers, agriculture inputs like seeds and equipment are affordable rate and which were more accessible to them. So this IFCO is one example of promotion of cooperative movements. And then other you could say the primary and then non-governmental initiatives that is also aligned with the community development program, because community development program, one very important approach is also in a present day we talk about that is the PPP, public private partnership. So Amul is one big example of how they have this cooperative bring a lot of the changes in the rural community and bring a lot actually the revolution in the milk production of a country. Awareness and education. So the CDP contributed to raising awareness among rural communities about the importance of education, health and hygiene. Adult literacy programs in the school helped actually this all improve literacy rates in the rural areas. So awareness and education regarding the schools and adult education and training. So this all actually we have witnessed a kind of the success in the field of community development programs so far. Just coming back to the history. So integrated development, so started from the 1970s to 1980s. It's about the shift towards integrated rural development, emphasis on improving services and economic agriculture, right? So here integrated rural development or health education. So the major initiatives like IRDP that launched in the year 1978, and then tribal development programs is also an important program, right? So integrated rural development, that is IRDP, actually launched in the 1978 with the objective of major poverty alleviation initiatives in India aimed at improving the socio-economic condition of the rural poor. The program focused on providing all kind of the asset-based assistance and the income generation opportunities, especially through subsidies and then bank credit to marginal community farmers, landless laborers and rural artisans as well. We sought to create self-employment and raise the standard of living of the rural community and rural areas by integrating many efforts across sectors like agriculture, animal husbandry, and small industry. So integrating all these areas together, that was the major thrust of this program of integrated rural development to bring a more holistic development. Okay. Next, the kind of tribal development is also the program designed to address the unique socio-economic demands and the needs of India's tribal. So this was tribal development program includes special initiatives like the tribal sub-plans which allocates funds for tribal development, welfare in the different sectors, be it preserving their cultural heritage or improving access to education and healthcare and promoting sustainable livelihood. So it is very again integrated aspect, because the problem in the tribal life is so much interconnected. The life is because so cohesive. So that's why tribal development program is also with the idea of integration. Okay, integration the different issues together and then provide the programs accordingly, because if the education has been given to the tribal community, that definitely is going to impact it of their economic life. So as the problems are in vicious circle, so your program should be in that way that it's one subsystem has to be once resolved, it is also resolve some kind of the factors or reduce some kind of the negative factors of the other subsystem. Okay. Next phases of community development was from 1990s to 2000 was on the participation and empowerment, right? So integrated development, now it's about the participatory. So in the participatory, women's empowerment, participatory government, local self-governments. So within that Mahila Samakhya introduced in the year 1988, that was a women's empowerment program launched in the year 1988. This primary aim to enhance women's participation, education, economic development and local governance even, right? So it was Mahila Samakhya, very important program that is for the empowerment of the women particularly. Then we all are very much aware about the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment happened in the year 99 for local governance, that is the Panchayati Raj, right, in the rural and the same way in the urban areas. So it is what it promotes a lot of the aspects. It includes lots of the aspect like the women reservation into that, and the kind of three-tier system and all. So this actually through this all programs and then initiative, we could say that participation and empowerment in the community development has been introduced. Moving ahead, next phase is about the right-based approach. So it's started from the 2000 to present. It's about emphasis on right-based approaches to develop. What is right-based approach? First, let's discuss this. A framework of development of social justice that emphasizes the importance of human rights in addressing issues like inequality, poverty, discrimination. Or this approach actually advocates for the recognition, protection, and fulfillment of rights, ensuring that all individuals and groups can access the rights and then any kind of the entitlements, any kind of the facilities they could access to those. So this is right-based approach is about the being human, you have lots of the rights. Being a citizen of India, you have lots of the rights, but your rights somewhere is not being given. So why, what are the reason behind the gap between the actually rights and the initiatives? So that has to be identified, and the right, advocacy should be based on the right base. So like National Rural Employment Guarantee Program, that is the Manrega, which talks about the 100 days guarantee employment, right? So this is what through this kind of unskilled laborers has been given at least 100 days employment just to bring them up in the economic aspect, right? So this act is Manrega was launched in the year 2005 to provide legal guarantee at least 100 days of full unskilled wage employment in a financial year to every rural household whose adult members volunteers to do any kind of the unskilled manual work, like maybe in the construction of the roads of their own area, construction of the dams, construction of the wells and all. So this is what, again, very beautiful program. Next is about right to education. So right to education enacted in year 2009, that's actually provides for the free and compulsory education for children aged from 6 to 14. That is again a right base. That is what the right of the children, right, to get an education. Its main features include legal rights, quality assurance, quality standard of the education, reservation of at least 25% in the private school. They have to given the admissions to the poor and the underserved community members. So 25% should be reserved for those underserved communities. So that is what the right of, through this, that is what the kind of equity and this right-based approach. Next, sustainable development. This is the buzzword in the present day world all over we are so much concerned about the economic development, social development, along with the environmental development, and to keep the future safe for our coming generation. So that is what the basic philosophy behind the sustainable development. So any development which sustains for longer, right? So focus on sustainability, climate resilience and inclusive growth, global alignments with sustainable development goals, right? So every country is aligned, all their activities and the programs aligned in accordance to along with the goals of the SDGs, that is the sustainable development programs. So that is what the focus areas is: environmental sustainability, economic empowerment, social equity, and the major programs and the initiatives has been taken in India, like the Smart Cities Mission, Sustainable Livelihood Programs, National Skill Development Mission. So there are a lot programs has been launched in the area of this under this sustainable development. Moving ahead, now coming to the principle of community development. Now we understand what are the historicity and what is the present day demands of the community development, how we have to move as a social worker or representative of any agency to actually go along with the demands of the government and then social welfare activity to bring social development in the community, right? So principles are actually the guidelines which actually govern our overall behavior and activities, guide us how to move in a community and what to look into and what not to. So principles like participation. So according to the Midgley, meaningful participation is essential for development because it empowers individuals to take their future and then contribute to the community decision making. So participation is actually the fundamental and foundational principle of community development. So even it is a macro level, That's also should go with the line with the idea of the community development. So any kind of the programs and policy, if you actually intervene into the rural area, so you have to go along with the within the periphery of Panchayati Raj institution of that rural area. So that is what the community, it ensure the members of community of that their own community can involve more actively with all kinds of the rights in their hands. So this is what the participation, because once the community has participation, they actually understand their own issues and they can design their own programs. So the principle of community participation emphasizes the active involvement of engagement of community members in the planning to moving to the decision making and then implementation process and then whole implementation of this of the project. So once the community participated from from planning to decision making to implementation, what they feel that whatever the activity is going on and they are participating to that, so they feel like that is their baby and they keep those their baby keep intact and more sustainable. So that is why it is very important in the present day sustainable developmental aspect of the community is through the community participation. Just moving ahead, next principle is about the inclusion and social justice. So it's somehow related to the participation. So community development strive to be inclusive, ensuring that all members of the community should come participate into that developmental aspect, and that programs and policies should be accessible for everyone, right? So whether it is in the process or in the approach, so everywhere everyone has to be there. So inclusivity and social justice is important. Maybe go with the equity. So first emphasis should be given to the underserved and then whose voice has not been heard. So started from the in the queue who is in the back. So that is what the inclusion and social justice. So it focuses on ensuring that all members of the community, regardless of their background, be it from any kind of the religious group, minority groups, or any caste group, any class group, any gender. So anyway, so all socioeconomic status are actively involved in considering in the developmental process. So everyone participation further actually resulted into more inclusive development. Moving ahead, next principle talks about the self-determination. So the principle of self-determination underscores the right of individuals and communities to determine their own developmental paths. So they have, because they have all the information, so they can all develop, or they can determine or they can develop their own paths to get the goals and then objectives of any kind of the developmental programs. So communities should have the autonomy to define their goals, make decisions and control the developmental process. This respect the knowledge and experience of community members and reject a top-down approach and believing in the bottom-up approach. So this is self-determination, means giving all rights to the community members so they can develop their own path to get the goal, and this is about the bottom-up approach rather than the top-to-bottom approach. So where any program is from the top to bottom, definitely they cannot determine their goals and then paths and all. So it should be from bottom to up, so they can design their own path to reach the goal of the development. Moving to the next principle, that talks about the access and equity. So access and equity goes hand to hand, means anything which is accessible to everyone, it brings equality in the community, and few aspects and few programs and policy more exclusively and more inclusively for certain community which are disadvantaged actually provide the equity. So this involves actively identified and addressing the diverse needs of the various communities segments, ensuring that representation and tailoring interventions to be culturally sensitive and actually contextually appropriate. Maybe a few community members or subset of the community, maybe taking the example of the Dalit community has been not taken into part of that whole decision making. So create that situation. The program should be going with the all kind of the providing equity to that subsection of the community, right? So this principle actually fosters a more engaged, harmonious and resilient community where everyone has the opportunity to thrive and to contribute to collective progress and collective development of that community. Next is about the empowerment. So it is the part and parcel of community development empowerment, right? So because it involves enabling individuals and communities to gain control over their own living by enhancing their skills, informing them, sensitize them, access to the resources, by providing all such things, economic development and all. So the community members would definitely strive for the more empowerment. So this approach not only enhance the capacity for individuals, but also strengthen the community, right, as a whole, by promoting inclusivity, equity and social justice. So when every segment of the community they come participate, they feel empowered, and so the gap between the two section of the community may be reduced, because they also giving this kind of the program is also including those disadvantaged community, giving this idea to those community who are actually in the upper level of the power structure. They accepted that this, without this participation of this community, this program is not possible. So through this reduction in the gap could be possible. So empowerment involves fostering a sense of agency, self-efficacy, allowing community members to identify their own needs, set priorities and take action to achieve their goals. So these are the some of the objectives of bring empowerment within a community. So always go in a community, once you are working for the community development, keeping in mind that you have to provide the space for everyone for the equity, and create a kind of space where the others, and particularly the underserved, could learn, could sensitize, could understand their own rights. So by these you can think about the empowerment of those underserved communities, and so the equity, through this equity, the equality will come in the community, right? Moving ahead to next principles, that is about the community ownership. So the principle of community ownership emphasizes that community members should have the control over their own decision process and the decisions and resources involved in their development. So it ensures that initiatives and the designed, managed and sustained by community itself, rather than being imposed by any external agency. So definitely external agencies are involved, but the decisions, the path, all things have to be designed by the community with the facilitation and with the guidance of the external agency. That's so important for sure. So this principle of community ownership emphasizes the idea that members of a community should have a significant role in a decision making process and the management of local resources and the project. So we can keep in our minds the role of the Panchayati Raj institution in promoting the community ownership, right? Whatever the programs the government is trying to introduce, that is very vary, that is according to the context of that community, because the community has been involved and they have shown that their own ownership, that this program is for them, and they have been participated with all the kinds of the resources available for them. Then next principle is about the holistic approach. This holistic approach is about adapting a holistic approach, ensure that development efforts are balanced and consider all aspects of the community life. So definitely, as the community with the taking from the system perspective, are so much interrelated, interconnected in respect to their problems and issues and then agencies and institutions. So that's why once the structure are so much interrelated, interwoven, so processes are also interconnected and interwoven. So the solution should be holistic, that work in every aspect of that interwoven aspect of the community, right? So a holistic approach in community development recognize the challenges communities face or interconnected either social, economic, environmental or any political issues even of the community. So where it address the isolation, should not address in isolation. So every problem should be taken into consideration from the rest of the environmental consideration, right, in the context of whole community aspect. Okay. So the last one, the principle is about the advocacy. So by champion of social justice, human right, equity and inclusion, advocacy actually helps to address systematic barrier and ensure that perspective and needs of all community members are recognized in and addressed. It involves actively supporting and promoting the needs, rights and interest of the marginalized or underserved groups within a community. So advocacy is kind of legal, it's about the right-based approach, that who actually taking their rights in front Or so definitely as a social worker, as a community mobilizer, as a community worker, we have to advocate on behalf of the community members, because many times their voices are not been heard. So if your agency is working along with any kind of the government programs and welfare, you always go with this principle of advocacy, keeping in mind maybe the inequities is there in the community. So you could advocate on behalf of that particular subsection of the community, or maybe sometime for the whole community, right? Depending upon the context and the dynamics and the needs and then process of the community. So sorry, one more principle, that is about the networking. So networking, we have already talked about that. This networking is so important within community, with outside the community, with the government agency and all. So this principle of networking in community development emphasizes the importance of building a relationship and connection between individuals, organization and community to share resources and knowledge and support for common good. So many a time community is having lot of the program, a lot of the resources available with them. Maybe they are not understanding the capacity of their own. So at that time you have to sensitize, you have to make them realize that these are the resources you are actually not identified, or if the resources are not available, maybe, so you could have to bring those resources for those community. That is possible only if any community is good in networking. Means networking could be is about the social interaction and cohesion, or it's a more kind of the formal networking as well. So through effective networking, community practitioner can actually strengthen social capital, facilitate information exchange and create partnership, but that contribute to the sustainable development effort. If you are going with the good kind of the networking in the community, you will be more able to generate the information in around the community in a larger area. So networking in one way is helpful in generating awareness, creating information to the larger scale through utilizing the resources if it is required anytime. It's through the good networking you can further facilitate the different kind of the resources or different kinds of the support system at the time of the emergency or at the time of the requirements. So this is all about the principles of community development. Now these are the certain points and that is what the effective community development should be: inclusive and equitable. This is what the gist of all the principles. So any program should be inclusive and equitable. Initiated and supported by community, means participation should be there. Members of benefit to the community. A long-term endeavor, community development should go with some kind of the long-term sustainable goal, definitely addressing some short-term objectives and demands and needs of the community. So well planned. So planning is so important. We have discussed the planning, the importance of the planning, because if the planning is not good, you don't actually research the community needs and you don't understand the power structure of the community. If you don't know about the available resources of the community, you don't develop any kind of networking. So the program is going to be somewhere dropped in between. So well planned programs should be, and even if the program is already been there, so well planned strategy you should go with, right? So holistic and integrated into the bigger picture. So we are in the world where everything is so interwoven or interconnected. So because of this web of relationship, as McIver and Page has said, that society is a web of relationship where everyone is interconnected to each other. So holistic and integrated approach need to be to going with them and to bring the changes in the bigger aspect, grounded in experiences that leads to the best practices, grounded in experiences. So maybe at the time you are working in a community, you find some kind of the modification required. So you have to be with this grounded experience. You can actually modify your programs, your approach, your strategy if it is required. So these are some very important effective community development aspect that you have to keep in your mind while moving to the for the community development. So this is all about the today's lecture of week 5.